Hi, my name's Claire. I'm from Northampton. I'm 46 years old. I'm a professional. I own my own house. I keep my house nice. I still am very lucky to have my mother and father, which are my son's grandparents. And I just want to tell you a bit about my story today, which I think a lot of you probably have the same story, but are too afraid to come forward with it or talk to somebody about it, or actually not having the support to go to. So, my son is 16. My son is my only child. He is the apple of my eye. As much as I hate him, I love him, because you don't always like your children. My story today is kind of an affirmation for myself to say, actually, I was a good mum. I am a good mum, and I am a good parent. As much as I've punished myself to say that actually I wasn't a good parent, my son has got into so much trouble and so much turmoil that actually I felt like it was my fault. But looking at it today, which I'll get to at the end, is actually no, I did an all right job. What I wanted to say to mums, dads, girlfriends, boyfriends, mums, aunts, uncles, grandparents, whoever's involved with you and that child, it's as hard for them as it is for you as well. I fell out with my parents through all of this. Luckily for me, we've built a relationship back. This all started probably, I'd like to say, 2 years ago, but I think with my son, it probably started at the age of 12 to 13. And I punished myself thinking that I'd let my son go over to the local park, but actually as a boy child and as a son, you have to give them that bit of freedom. So he was really good. Like, he'd come home from the park and say, Mummy, I've come back because they're smoking. And I was like, yeah, good, that's brilliant. So his morals are there. But as time went on, he went to upper school. And I think this is where a lot of people will know the change happens, is the transition to upper school. My son's extremely tall. He's very big for his age, and he looks older than he is. And I think being a male, you're always fighting for the alpha male spot. He was always the clown of the class, a lot like his mum. He was always the joker, and he was always the one that went that step further, to the point where he was actually kicked out of school. My belief is my son's of mixed parentage, which people don't always know, and I don't think it's an issue. I don't discuss it. However, my son is a black child, and dyslexia was mentioned. They never tested him. This was mentioned, that was mentioned, nothing was ever done. So my belief has been that because he never went to school for 3 years, never had the support, nothing happened. And my belief was that he was the naughty black child, get rid. That was my belief. Whether that is the case, I don't know, but that was my belief. So it was very textbook. He's been naughty, get him out. Had he been blonde haired and in a wheelchair, I think it would have been a different story. I think he probably would have got all the support he needed, but that's my belief. So he was at home all the time, and we had some homeschooling. Didn't really work. His attention span was lacking. It wasn't for him. I had lots of services visit my home, social services, etc., etc. And they've got a job to do, but my thing has always been people have got boxes to tick. And I did really feel like people were sitting there ticking boxes all day long. And it was very frustrating. And I was just saying to one of the support workers that is here with me today, they sent a social worker around. Nothing wrong with being older. She's obviously very good at her job. She was in her long denim skirt, her sandals, and her grey hair and her frilly top. My son at 14 and 15 is not going to engage with that kind of person. Regardless of how good you are, he is not going to engage. And I was screaming out for and praying for a black male who's been there, been to jail, been in trouble, and come through the other end, that my son could sit and engage with. It took me 3 years to get it. And Anton appeared like an angel. And it was good because he could sit down with another black person, because whether he's mixed race or not, he regards himself as black. He's more black than he is white, and he could engage. So when he was at home from school and I had to go out and work still, I was coming home and little things were not right. I could smell weed in my house. The house was very untidy. The aggression started to come through. Although my son has never hit me, he has punched 9 barrels of crap out of my house. I've had the police involved because I've been terrified at some points. As he progressed, probably a year later, it became apparent that he wasn't in a gang, but he was definitely doing something like dealing drugs for an older gentleman. I say gentleman, trying to be polite. An older gentleman who was white in his 30s, but thought he was Jamaican and spoke Jamaican with a gold tooth. Never met him. Don't particularly want to. Did find out who he was. And my son got arrested and had items of drug affiliation on him. Wasn't the first time he'd been arrested. My son had been arrested several times before. Most Friday evenings, I was in the detention holding suite, whatever you want to call it, being an appropriate adult. And then obviously being in court and holding down a full-time job at the same time. It was a nightmare. And to sit in a court when you've got loads of people in there that you do not know, they don't know you, and you're crying. You are literally sobbing because you can't hold your emotions in. And then you're issued with the fine, you as the parent. So it's another struggle to add to the list. So my son was smoking marijuana, weed, ammo, wedding cake. Yes, it is called that out there. And weed is not as we know it as we were kids. And I don't care what anyone says, oh, I don't know about weed. We all do. We've all been there. We've all seen someone smoke it, or we've all had a puff. And it was proper grown weed. Nowadays, it's ammo, wedding cake, whatever you want to call it. And this stuff is lethal. And I mean lethal. Like psychosis, bad temper, temperament, the whole shebang, and the craving of it as well. To the actual point that my son stole my card and went to the bank and drew out money. And I got a notification and he denied it. And he watched me on the phone to the fraud department of my bank, trying to find out how £100 had come out of my bank account. And he swore blind he hadn't done it. He was in trouble. He needed the money. He got the money back to me because he did it, he flipped it, which if anyone doesn't know what that is and is watching it, it's when they get a small amount of cash, they get the drug, they flip it over, they sell it, they make the money back. It's happening in, day out. I'm talking about a male, my son, but it's females that are doing it as well. Snapchat, Snappy Chat, whatever you want to call it, didn't grow up on it, didn't have a mobile phone. Nowadays, that's what they live for. I have seen things on Snapchat that really, girls giving oral sex to boys and vice versa, gang sex, the whole shebang. I've seen it all, and it's quite shocking and it's quite terrifying. So anyway, my son went on to be arrested, to the point where I had armed police at my house when I had sent him to another county to be with his dad because I couldn't have him here anymore. Hardest decision in my life to do that. To tell social services I don't want my son anymore. Really hard, but I had to do it because he was not safe here. I was not safe here. He had to go. This happened last Christmas, just before Christmas. Everybody had gone on holiday. I had nobody to speak to. Nobody. My parents couldn't even speak to me anymore because they're older. They had to disengage. And when it was 5 days before Christmas, I wanted to know if I could speak to my son. I couldn't speak to anyone. Everyone had gone on holiday. So, guys, I know how you feel and I know how desperate it can be. So, anyway, I'm going to put it out there, and I don't care about the legal thing. They were told, and I was told, that he couldn't contact me for 28 days because of the situation that had happened in home. When he'd left where he'd gone, his father's in another county, he'd ran away because he couldn't cope there. He came here. The police then said, oh, no, that's fine, he can stay here. Oh, but you told me I couldn't speak to my son for 28 days, but because you've got nowhere to put him, or you don't want the bother of putting him somewhere, he has to stay here. I had to go with him to get him off bail, and I was the person that he'd been arrested because of. So it's very, very complex. It's very, very distressing, and it's very, very frustrating. This continued anyway. I'd go to work in the morning, my house would be immaculate. I'd come home and the house would be trashed. There'd be food everywhere, drug, Rizzlers, the lot. And it was heartbreaking because somebody actually phoned me and said to me, oh, I was with your son today. He was raised by a queen. I was like, really? She was like, yeah. He washed up. He said, please. He said, thank you. He was so polite and so courteous. And that's the only thing that kind of makes me think he was brought up properly. He was brought up with the right morals. But when he was at home, the other way I look at it is when he was verbally attacking me and smashing the house up, maybe that was his safe place. Maybe he felt like I was the only person that he could do that to. His frustrations were taken out on the closest person. So when your son or child is kicking off, I know it's hard because I've been here screaming the house down, effing and jeffing and just being foul. But you then have to sit back and think, they're doing it because it's safe for them to do that. So you are the closest person that they can do that to and kind of air off. Anyway, so we went through lockdown. I did 7 months of lockdown, furlough, 80%. And everyone's like, oh, that's really good, 80%. Have you ever taken 20% off your salary as a single person with a mortgage and no benefits? It's hard. So we went through the whole lockdown thing together and we got through it. It was really hard, but we got through it. And then towards the end, he wanted to do construction, couldn't go to college because of COVID, but he's moved to his father's in a different county. They've built up a rapport. He has 2 younger siblings and he is working in construction, which is his dream. He's doing really well. He has a spliff probably once on a weekend, which is fantastic because they all do it, but he's not doing it every day. It's not an addiction anymore. He's saved thousands of pounds worth of money for his car next year. He's got goals and aspirations and dreams and he's fulfilling them. His dad didn't have a massive part in his life. His dad's kind of got the nice end of the deal now. But I'm glad because he's safe, he's happy, and he's doing what he loves. That is just the outline of my story. I could go on forever about the real crappy times that I went through and the suicidal thoughts, wanting to end it, wanting to pick up and go and leave, wanting to never see my son ever again, because it's okay to not be okay. And I'm a big supporter of that. And it is okay to feel those ways because, like I said, I hated my son, but I will always love him. And there's a big difference between like, hate and love. I will always love him. But I just want people to know that I'm here. My Instagram's out there. If you need to reach out and you just need to talk to somebody real about what's really going on, I can talk till the cows come home and I will listen until the cows come home. It's such a desperate time out there at the moment. Our children are in danger. I don't care how many millions of pounds you've got and how many bedrooms you've got in your big house, your child is still in danger. And if you don't support and keep a tab on it, it can, I could be visiting his grave now or getting a pass to go into prison every week to see him. Luckily for us, he's made it through. But this is so serious and it can happen to anybody. My parents were just beside themselves. But he is the apple of their eye, and he always will be. And they're just happy that he's happy now, and we've made it through. But the support for me was not there, even from my parents, because I'm sure a lot of people that are watching will realise that actually grandparents or your parents, as much as they love you, they will back off because they can't handle it. My parents are in their 70s. Who wants that crap? Who wants to deal with that? And after a certain period of time, it becomes too much for them as well. So they have to take a back seat. Therefore, you are then left on your own. That's all I really have to say today. Like I said, I could go on forever and ever and tell you some really nitty gritty stuff, but I don't think I need to, because it's there and it's out there. So yeah, I just want to put it out there that, you know, financial strains, relationship strains, and keeping it together while dealing with what's going on in the outside world at the moment is a really, really tough story. And that's all I really wanted to say today.